If you are someone that's been dreaming of life abroad, but you're still stuck between figuring out whether you belong in Europe or Asia, I think this video will be helpful and you'll want to watch the whole thing because I have experience pretty much living 5 years on both continents. So in Europe, I'm going to focus on my time in Spain, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro. For Asia, I will focus on my time living in Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And I would say again, about 5 years for both of those places. On average, I lived about 6 months at one time in those places. So, yeah, I feel like multiple visits, yeah, dozens of visits when I think about it over the years, definitely adds up. And let me just start with this. There is no wrong destination for you to choose. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to choose a place that is going to check all the boxes and fulfill all our needs. But you have to really decide what it is that you're looking for. And so I hope with this video, when I break down the peace that Asia offers and the charm that Europe can feel like, hopefully you get a better understanding of what continent is best for your needs. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with cost of living and quality of life. So it's not a secret or a surprise that Asia's cost of living just across the board. Yes, I would say Thailand, between my time living in Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia, I found Vietnam to be the most affordable. When I think about Europe and my time living between Spain, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro, I would say Bosnia and Herzegovina was probably the most affordable. And when you look at some of those Balkan countries and, you know, I also want to like have a honorable mention for Albania because Albania has one of, I think, the most generous visas for you to stay for up to a year. And Albania is slept on because, people think of that part of the world as, former Yugoslavia and is it safe and how's the political tension there? But Albanians are very kind, very welcoming, very warm. And every time I'm there, they look so surprised that I take the time, the effort, and the money to invest in their country and just be there for long periods of time. So I think you will find Albania out of all of the European countries to be the one that is the most welcoming to tourists and international people because they know that they're not everyone's number one choice when it comes to whether you're booking a holiday or, you know, moving abroad temporarily or for life. Most people don't put Albania as their top choice. So I think for them it's an honor, that they feel chosen. Okay. Another thing to consider is when it comes to the cost of everyday life and needs, I want you to tally like what are the things that you're actively going to spend time on, spend money on, but then also consider what are the things that you want access to. Because if a beach is a big part of your everyday life and that is something that you can't put a price on because the peace and the calm that a beach brings you is, yeah, you want it to be a part of your everyday life. When I was living in Barcelona, it was not uncommon for you to just rock up to the beach and see people, whether it's in suits or they look like they're in their formal attire, because it's a Tuesday, it's a weekday, and people literally walk to the beach to have their lunch and to socialize. And, people will joke like siesta, but honestly, many of them close restaurants for a couple hours during the afternoon. So a country like Spain, even though right now I don't think they are the best choice, I would put Portugal as an option versus Spain. I'm just talking about my experience because Portugal also has beautiful beaches. So you want to consider if a beach is something that you really want access to, Montenegro as well, Croatia as well. Bosnia is kind of landlocked, so you would have to go to Croatia in order to access a beach or Montenegro. So I think the beaches in I think the beaches in Europe were prettier and cleaner. I hate to say that, but with Thailand, for example, you would want to go to the islands. Like you would want to fly to Koh Samui or Phuket in order to really enjoy time at the beach. But most digital nomads are staying in Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Pattaya. So it's hard for you to get that same access to a beach. So when it comes to a beach, I would say Europe wins. Okay. Another thing about comfort. I think Asia wins when it comes to everyday comfort, access, and ease. To be able to walk down any street, whether in Vietnam, Indonesia, or Thailand, and be able to get a massage for relatively low. And I'm mindful never to use the word cheap because that's disrespectful to the people that live here, and money is always subjective. But let's say you can get a $7 US, $7 US massage for an hour in all those countries in Asia. You can't beat that. And even though I've gotten many massages in Europe, I think the lowest I've ever paid was $50 US. And that also felt, cheaper than what it is in the US. So it still felt like a steal, but it's not as affordable as it is in Asia. So if you know you're someone that is on a health journey, or you want to be mindful with your body and you are trying to actively prioritize self-care and, yeah, just taking care of yourself, I would say Asia, like hands down. I think it's incredible how accessible services are for just about anything. Okay. Next up, let's talk about pace and lifestyle. So I think Asia has a slightly faster pace. Whenever I'm in Asia, I feel like I'm living in the future. Everything that I see, from digital billboards to the monstrosity of the malls to apps to tech to I feel like Asia is just, not only is the global world power shifting to, I think China is the number one country in the world. I think they have dominated across the board, and I think they will become the center of the global economy if they are not already. So it's really humbling to be in Asia because you might see, I don't know, photos and videos of villages and like those streets with lots of wires and telephone cords, and it looks chaotic, but that's not the whole picture of that country or that city. And so much of Thailand is so developed to the degree where you're like, oh, um, America cannot touch what Thailand has already mastered. And it's incredible. It's humbling. It makes you really dream bigger. There's a level of I don't know, you just feel that much more motivated and inspired. So if you are entrepreneurial and you are someone that's involved in tech, or you want to create a business, you want to network, you're trying to grow your social circle, I feel like Asia is the place to be. There's not only so much to be inspired by, but there's a lot of conferences that come through here, happen in here. Um, yeah, I think the world is catching on to how powerful many of these Asian countries are. So I would say when it comes to entrepreneurship and tech and business, Asia by far. Where Europe wins on the other side is if you are someone that's close to retirement age, looking to slow down, looking to relax, looking to just enjoy life. Enjoyment can be had in Asia, but I think the pace that Europe has mastered is unmatched. And some of my European friends, they're scattered from all over, but many of them will joke that they don't understand the American hustle. They're like, why do you guys have to work so hard? And they don't know how expensive America is. But yes, there is this feeling of you're working to be able to afford to live, and that is sad. I think with the Europeans, they have this understanding of like, we might pay higher taxes, but we get free healthcare. We have great access. We get 1 year maternity leave, 2 year paternity leave. Like, they have things that make living humane to where they're not constantly burnt out, stressed, living in chaos. And I feel like so much of the desperation to like keep up and advance and get promotions and never stop, like that isn't healthy and that's not sustainable for life. So if you are coming out of that world and looking to optimize for rest, then I think Europe is going to make more sense for you. Because if you came to Asia, I feel like you would be either overwhelmed or overstimulated by all the hustle and bustle, because it also feels like a continent that's very on. But I've spoken about this before, the difference between Asia and the US and how the hustle and bustle. kind of affects you is that in Asia, it's inspiring and it's almost like an invitation to dream bigger and do more. In America, there's not an invitation, it's an obligation. You will not make it if you don't work more. That's- Hustle. Let's go. You got you got bills, you got obligations, you got a pending health crisis that you don't know what day you're gonna have to spend $50,000 copay. It just America, I feel like we're always waiting for the other shoe to drop with a tragedy that we're going to have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on. In Asia, that just, you don't live with that looming gray cloud of when am I going to be in financial turmoil? Okay. When I think about community and long-term viability, let's talk about Europe first. So I think Europe is better for families and those looking at, I don't know, I also think of here's one thing that's interesting about Europe. I have the concentration of diversity. I have the biggest, how do I say this? My most, why is this such a complicated sentence? Okay, what I'm trying to explain is how all of my friends that live in Europe are the most diverse friends that I have, meaning the concentration of diversity on the European continent is, I think, the greatest in the world because Asia, it will always be primarily or majority Asians, the US, majority white people, but Europe, you're getting Africans, Middle Eastern, Asians, Latin American people, Europeans. So there's such a mix of cultures. And what that does for community building, I found it really easy to make friends in Europe. It felt like there was just always this culture of belonging, hanging out, hosting. Like I would just get invited to stuff all the time. And this wasn't like big events, it was at people's houses. It was like, oh, Glow, we're doing this. It's so and so's birthday. Or, oh, we're just having people over. Or, oh, we're just going to hang out. And I'm like, y'all aren't tired of each other? I don't have the stamina. I am introverted, believe it or not. And my social battery and capacity for outside energy, especially people that I don't know that deep yet, I can do one social event a week. So getting invited multiple times, I really pushed myself to just be more outgoing. But I'm someone that like I have a large internal world and I love to just like sit back and observe and be a part of the scene, but not dominate the scene. So yeah, I found Europe to be just this very, we're all here to live and have fun. It's a very inviting energy. And I will say when it comes to languages, and this is where there's passport privilege, English privilege, but I could always trust and or assume that pretty much anywhere I went, English was going to be spoken or at least understood by the majority of people there. And again, this is not something that I'm speaking with like, yeah, good, you better translate for me. Absolutely not. But when it came down to it, if we have a circle of friends and we have someone from Morocco, someone from the Netherlands, someone from Belgium, and someone from Portugal, they're going to all speak English. And it's like I could always be a part of the conversation because I can always trust or assume that English was going to be the most common language between all of our ethnicities. And things like that, it's comforting, but it's not inspiring for me. Like I'm like, no, no, sorry. It's comforting, but it's also inspiring for me to be able to be like, man, I don't want them to always translate for me. I need to start, and that is when my language learning journey started about 10 years ago, is I didn't feel comfortable with people always feeling like they needed to translate for me. And I wanted to just make more of an effort. Learning languages is like a lifelong pursuit. In the same way that you don't know 100% of the English dictionary, you will always be learning words. So instead of trying to approach the process with like, I need 100% mastery, just start with conversational words, 100 vocabulary words, increase it to 200, then 300. But when you're traveling and having everyday conversations, you're really only ever using about 100 vocabulary words. So I would say that's a good start. You can, of course, use ChatGPT to help you figure out what are the most 100 common words that you're going to use with travel. But I've used for the last 7 years Preply. I'll drop the link in the video description, and it's a 70% discount code as well. But I love learning with tutors, people that are native to the country that they can kind of teach me slang and colloquial terms, and so that I'm not sounding super formal like the Germans do. Sorry if you're from Germany. Okay, and I think just overall, when I think about the top three Asian countries that I think you should consider for relocation, moving, temporary, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to put Thailand at number one. I do believe that Thailand is the top country for people looking to start over, um, to relocate in a place that can give them everything they need while helping them also save money. I think the infrastructure, the hub of Bangkok and Chiang Mai, and just the accessibility, it's really top notch. And number two, I'm going to put Vietnam. Vietnam is very entrepreneur friendly, and I would say specifically Da Nang. I really enjoyed Hoi An, Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City. I don't recommend. That is a very overwhelming place. However, it's worth passing by. But I think Vietnam is probably going to be the most affordable out of this list. The only reason I put Thailand on top is because I think you have more people that can meet you halfway when it comes to language. Vietnam, I don't think, yeah, I just don't remember many people. Like I was charading the whole time. And Vietnamese is I think it's a harder language to learn than Thai. And it's oof, that, yeah, it's also tonal. So I felt very, yeah, I felt very out of place. But, and one thing I'll say about Vietnamese people as well, they are a lot more forward than Thailand. So I think the Thai culture is very polite. They're very respectful. They're very kind and all the things. Vietnam, I'm walking through a market and a woman just pops me on the butt and says, "You won't find anything your size here." I said, "Excuse me?" Of course, she said it with an accent, but she was like, "Whoa, big butts! You won't find anything here." No, like, no, no, too big. And I'm like, "Can you stop smacking my ass? What is this place?" They are overly friendly and casual with you. And coming from Thailand, it can just be a culture shock because you're used to Thai people keep a very safe distance and they're very, you know, yeah, just and Vietnam, I thought they are so But listen, if you have a sense of humor, I feel like their banter is very, yeah, they're very sarcastic, very witty. They can banter with you. Um, and yeah, I think there's also one thing that you want to be mindful of, especially in Ho Chi Minh City. And I'm just going to mention this as an aside, because it's probably the first thing that I was told before I got there, is that if you are carrying a purse, it's very common for like purses to be snatched. So you want to be mindful of that. But this was mostly Ho Chi Minh City. Vietnam is still very safe, but I just felt like I needed to mention that. And then last country for Asia that I recommend is Indonesia. It feels like a spiritual and creative hub. And you also want to be mindful, and I'm just going to speak really quickly from a believer standpoint, someone who's a Christian. There is a rabbit hole that you want to be mindful of. If you are searching, you might leave if you are searching, and I mean in terms of like if you are searching for God and you don't yet have that relationship and you're not yet rooted in your faith, there is a lot of places that can lead you to more questions than answers. If you are someone who is already grounded in your faith and you know who you are in Christ, you want to be mindful not to um yeah, there's a lot of open doors. So Bali could be a very spiritual place and a very creative place and lots of woo-woo stuff as well. So I guess I'm only sharing that for those who are believers that watch this in the community, that you don't want to get involved with everything. There's a lot that's available, but not everything is for you. Okay. Um, okay, and let's talk about Europe. So I think Portugal probably has the greatest visa setup for people that are digital nomads that want to live there. At this point, I have probably 15, at least 15 friends that have moved from the US to Portugal in the last 10 years. Yeah, some of them started early, and one of them just bought a farm there, but they still live in LA. So I was like, "Oh, cool." They're like, "Yeah, just I just want to raise my chicken." But I could tell that the level of peace that they have when they go to Portugal, I'm like, "Oh, so Portugal is beautiful, the land, the coast, all the things." So I would say it's probably the number one option. Number two, I'm actually going to give to Croatia, even though I've been mostly talking about Montenegro and Bosnia. I think the Croatian coast and the visa for digital nomads that's available makes it just an obvious choice. Croatia is a place where if I ever bought a European home, it would be there. The country, the food, the people, they, first of all, they have such a admiration and adoration for Black people, and you feel it immediately. And again, when you're not used to that, you're used to in the US, you're kind of, you're just used to being disregarded, dismissed, ignored, and you kind of unfortunately take that on. And if you don't have a strong grounding and affirmation about yourself, you start to internalize, yeah, maybe I'm not much. And I don't want to project, but I absolutely did that. I started to shrink in spaces because I could feel how I was minimized. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to cause problems and I don't even like this place anyway, and I'm on my way out. So let me not make a big deal. But I never felt fully loved, respected, or cherished in the US. And I say this with a caveat because obviously, the college that I went to was amazing. The high school that I went to, my teachers, professors, all of them were amazing. This is the everyday situation that I'm talking about, where you walk into Target and immediately you feel people following you. You have your phone in your purse and you want to check the grocery list that you have, but you're like, dang it, if I reach in my purse, they're going to think that I'm putting something in there and they're going to think that I'm stealing, and now they're going to follow me twice as hard. And you're constantly calculating the actions that you take just to not be perceived as the stereotypes that they have already projected on you. I was living like that constantly, where I felt like, how do I prove that I'm a good Black? I'm one of the good ones. Ah, y'all, so exhausting. So to be in places like Thailand, like Croatia, where you walk through the door and they're like, welcome. Where have you been all our lives? I think there's a deep respect for Black culture and Black people. I think they can see what we've been through and they admire the strength and resilience that we carry. And I mean, it just hits different when you're not used to being able to take up space like that. So that's why I put Croatia at number two. And then Montenegro, Albania, Bosnia, and Herzegovina kind of shared the third spot. These are EU candidate nations for Schengen, potential Schengen routes. I actually haven't checked that recently, so don't take that literally. But basically, Schengen zone countries allow you to move pretty much freely for 180 days. And non-Schengen zone countries like Albania, Montenegro allow you to stay for another up to six months, I believe. So you can kind of hop back and forth in and out of the Schengen zone. And to be honest, I did that for about 7 years. And yes, it can be tricky, if anyone ever like actually counts down, okay, you've been in the Schengen zone for it looks like 129 days, and now you've left for 30 days and you're coming back. So now you have 40 days left. I think only Germany, that was the scariest. Y'all, they actually brought in three people to count because they looked at all my stamps, mind you, 52-page passport, stamps of, I couldn't tell you, but let's say there was 80 stamps and all, going through all the stamps, figuring out which ones are the European stamps, counting the entry and exit days, and then calculating that I was 2 days over. I'm not a beggar, but I begged. And when in doubt, you got to play the stupid American card. And oof, I'm grateful they had mercy on me because yeah, it's tricky. But at the time, this was 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. This was like the boom of travel bloggers and travel influencers. So they're not seeing people really travel like this. And I'm just on this perpetual, how do I escape my student loan plan? I paid it off, don't worry. When I turned 30, I was like, I am entering my 30s debt free. And that was the final check and the final debt that I had to pay, $60,000. I wrote one single check and I said, "Mm, leave me alone for life." Yeah, okay, where did we go with there? The coastline, the accessibility. I would have to say out of all three of those, Montenegro, Albania, and Bosnia, I would say I find myself having the best day-to-day routine in Montenegro. I really love Tivat. Obviously, Kotor is beautiful. Budva is where I spent probably the most amount of time out of all of those places. But I just find Montenegro to just be so effortlessly beautiful. And they know this. People, in the Balkans will say Montenegrins are a little cocky, and they have reason to be. It's a beautiful country. Okay, y'all. I hope that was helpful. I hope at this point you have a better idea of what you need for yourself. Again, Europe is a place for you're looking to relax, you're looking to rest, you're looking to do slow and easy travel. Asia is a place where if you feel young, large, and in charge, and you want to get out there and you want to be about the action and you want to see tech, you want to live in the future, absolutely Asia is going to be for you. Okay, thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, please like and subscribe and join the community. Turn your notifications on. I'm posting every single day. We're on day 91, which is crazy. Y'all keep me accountable, okay? Yeah, I'm just enjoying the ride and mostly talking about living abroad, helping you do the same. And I have some resources here. You can check out my Passport to Peace community if you are looking to start the first three steps to move abroad. It is a really powerful, honestly, training that like lets you see how simple the process can actually be. And then here for yesterday's video, where I talked about being robbed while I wasn't even in the US. Oh, it's crazy. I will see y'all tomorrow.